Off the top, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Andrew Fedora. I work with NSCC. I've been involved with the industry for a little over 25 years, worked with government, worked for nonprofits, large industry, and then finally ended up here. And the lovely Judic. Yeah, come on in. We're just getting started. And some introductions. We'll pull up an extra chair. There's a few extra chairs there. We're not going to make anybody sit in the middle here. All right, so the only thing you missed is an introduction. Andrew Fedora with NSCC. I do quite a few things with NSCC. I've been involved in forestry for quite a long time. Part of my job at NSCC is I teach geographic information systems, or mapping. And in the course of teaching that, I've seen a lot of advancements over the years, and one of the things that I'm really excited about, and we can get people to learn more about, is the Provincial Landscape Viewer. This is a free service provided by the Department of Natural Resources that will allow you to create your own maps with a whole pile of information on it. You know, you can have your boundary lines, forest cover. We'll go through a bunch of the different layers. But there's two things that are exciting about it. One is you can create some really, really nice maps with a lot of information on them. And then the other thing is that you can use it with a free app on your phone, for those of you who use these, called Avenza. And so what this app will do is this mapping service, it creates a map that is what's called geo-referenced. So it knows, like when you open it up on the app, where the location is, and so your GPS will work on your phone with it. So this is leaps and bounds ahead of like when I started with this stuff. I mean, I started with a string box and a map and compass and all of that sort of stuff, right? And then just, you know, like a lot of you just learn your land and you know where you're from and all of that sort of stuff, and where you're heading. You know, most of us know. Like, how many of you know pretty much every foot of your woodlot? Yeah, close to it, eh? Yeah. Well, how many of you have gotten lost? Well, there you go. Yeah. Well, hopefully this will help out with that too. So what I did, I don't know how clear this will be for you all. I did my best to kind of condense some of just the basic steps that you would need to go through to create a map with a Provincial Landscape Viewer. So some of the terminology, I don't know if you'd be familiar with it or not. But if you have any follow-up questions, so it's just take one page and you can pass those around if you don't mind. It highlights some of the main steps that you could go through to. Yep.
We need help.
You need help? Yeah. Okay. All right. Hang on a second.
It must be lost.
Yeah.
Police are over
Yeah.
You can have the chair and the computer there, because Andrew won't need it.
Oh, yeah. I can borrow your chair.
Yeah, you can take that chair. That's no problem at all. Yeah. So I made the mistake of wearing my NSCC shirt today, which means that people think I'm everything from custodial and janitor staff to information technology and the whole 9 yards, right? But we'll try to keep things down to mapping here. So, yeah, I'll just hop right into this. And so you can go on, if you just do a search in your search engine, and you can follow along, like if you have internet access on your phone right now, this all pops up on your phone. So you can actually create the maps on your phone, and then you can save it on your phone, and then plop it into the Avenza GPS map, and then start navigating with it right away.
Oh, thanks.
So it's pretty slick. So if you just like whatever your browser is, you know, if you do a search for your Provincial Landscape Viewer, it should take you here. Okay. So these are some of the steps that I outlined in the little handout that I have there. Now I'm not going to go too far down the rabbit hole on like all of the GIS terminology and stuff like that. Like this it's not a 4-month course. This is just a crash course and trying to get you up to speed so that you can create a map. If you have any questions after this session, you know, feel free to reach out to me. I think this is a great product and it's really, really helpful for landowners, and I get excited about it too. So if you want to learn how to make maps, I'm more than willing to help you make maps. So the first thing is just your kind of usual disclaimer, you know, that you go through and you click on that and you set OK. And so this is your base map that shows up like when you load it for the first time. And you can kind of see on this little handout that I made, you can, there's labels for all of the different tools that you can use. So the first thing that you want to do when you bring up this main map view, it automatically defaults to showing, you see all those colors there, these are ecological land classifications. And so this little icon over here is your layer list. So these are all the different layers that you can stack on your map, right? So you can have, you know, you have a base map, whether it's a topo map or satellite imagery, and we can look at that. But then maybe you want to have a layer of all of your forest roads, so then that gets displayed on top of that. And then maybe you want to have another layer that shows your boundary lines, and you can stack that on top of that. And then maybe you want to see protected areas or species at risk, or crown lands versus park lands, right? So that's essentially like how this works. Every time you turn on one of these layers, it shows more information. And so as you start mixing and matching, you know, so if you're, you know, let's say you're applying to Forest Nova Scotia to build a road and you wanted to keep your road in the dry, well, there's a wet area mapping, predicted wet areas layer there that you could use to help avoid that when you're putting your road in, as example. Or, you know, if you're wondering, are there species at risk, or is there species at risk habitat on my property? Well, you can put that layer down and that'll show you in the display. And so there is a bit of an explanation of layers in the little handout that I provided there. So when this starts, what you want to do, one of the first things you want to do is just turn off any layers that are displayed. So like I said, just use the charts with forestry, and then there's ecological land classification, and so in this case they were showing eco-districts. Now, as far as this little, let's see if I can expand this. Oh, look at that, okay. So one of the first things that you want to do when you have your map popped up is you want to, like I say, you want to turn everything off, and then you want to take a look through and see what sort of layers you might want to put on your map. And I guess maybe I'll back up for a second. Oddly enough, the help here on this website is actually quite helpful. I mean, sometimes it can be really, really confusing, right? So I strongly encourage, when you go to the Provincial Landscape Viewer and you're looking at all of this, take some time to hit the little help button, and then it goes into much more detail than I'm going to go into right now. But it talks about like all the different ways that you can search for information and go through things. That's where you see the legend of all the buttons. It'll show you how you can look at more of the in-depth information that's available for your stands. Teaches you how to navigate and find things. And then there's your layer list. But what I want to show you here is that, so these are the data layers that are available in the viewer, okay? So you have roads, forestry, and so there are layer groups, and then within each layer group there are subgroups. So we have roads, we have forestry, I think I have it listed there, ecological land classification, crown lands, protected areas, wildlife, and is there one more? No, I guess that's about it. So this gives an explanation of what each of those layers are, okay? Everybody with me so far? Mm-hmm. Pretty straightforward. So when you want to display a layer, what you have to do is you have to go all the way down to through the layer. We'll say it's like a file tree or like all the different layers within it. So so right now we have roads, property, forestry, crown lands, protected areas, and wildlife. I'm going to use forestry. So when I click on forestry, nothing happens. And the reason why is because I have to go down into the subsections. So under forestry, for some reason there's another forestry layer, and nothing is happening there. But let's go to forest stand treatment overview, height, wet area mapping. What do we want to look at? Natural disturbance. leading forest species. Okay. So you'll notice that I clicked on this and nothing has changed with my map, right? So now that I've gone down here, I know that I want to look at the leading forest species. So like when I look at the stands, which has the highest percentage of that given species. So I have leading forest species, and I'm going to go back up here, and I click on forestry, and then click on forestry again. And, okay, I'm zoomed out too far, so that's not a problem. So one of the things that, again, is mentioned in the handout is that if you're zoomed out on your map too far, the information isn't going to show up. And it makes sense for a couple of reasons, because if you're zoomed out this far, every time you move your map, it has to redraw the information. And so that can be time consuming and hard on your system. The other issue that comes up is that it's useless. Like to look at like micro stand level information this far out, it's not really going to tell you anything. Well, let's see what happens when we zoom in a little bit. So I have forestry, and I want to look at the leading forest species, okay? So since we're over here, I'll zoom in this area, and all of a sudden pops up, okay? So these are all of your polygons for all the information. These are all different stand delineations. And if you just click on one, it'll tell you, it'll give you some numbers on what your tree species are. So in this case, the way the Department of Natural Resources lists their species, it's they use an acronym, I guess. So SM would be sugar maple, O6 would be 60%, YB yellow birch, O2 is 20%, RM red maple, O2 is 20%. So we know that this stand is sugar maple dominant and it's with 60%, 114 cubic meters per hectare, 14 hectares, crown closure 60%. Gives you a lot of interesting information there. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the coding here, you can find that information on the Department of Natural Resources website. So there's what's called metadata. So it'll tell you what those numbers and letters mean, basically.
Andrew?
Yeah.
How accurate are those volume estimates?
Well, so here's the other thing, right? So when you look at the data, it says that this was the photo interpretation was done in 2008, right? So they will do some modeling and so on and so forth. So it'll get you in the ballpark, but it might not tell you what team you're on or what base you're on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's reasonably close, but you have to respect that your trees grow, and some of this, if it was done by photo interp, like there's no real substitute for ground truthing, but it gives you an idea of where to go, right? And that's basically what maps are. Like they're a snapshot in time to give you a rough idea, and it's really a toolbox. But there's nothing more valuable than just being out in the woods, right?
And that's gross volume as opposed to merchantable volume, presumably.
No, that's merchantable.
Oh, it's merchantable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, in that case, and so this was just one data set that I picked up on, just to show you folks an example. So.
How often do they bring it up to date?
Very frequently. There's a lot of it that's real time. So it depends on what part of the province you're in. Like there's some places where the data was captured as recently as within the last 6 months. And then there's some places where, it might have been 2008 where they did the photo interp. There are some places where you might have, older wet area mapping information, but newer species at risk finds. And so you can look through the data and it'll let you know like when it was created.
Can you switch over to the Highlands just for a minute? So
Yeah.
mentioned as an example, I would think that would be something that they would have done within the last year.
Sure. So I'm going to do one quick thing here. I can change the transparency on this, right? So like that's just a bunch of colorful shape files. But if I do this, then all of a sudden I can see with a little more clarity, right? I can see the landscape there a little bit better. Now, if I go up in my corner here, I can even change my base map. So let's use some satellite imagery instead. Right. So all of a sudden that's a lot more useful.
Yeah.
Because you can kind of even see the continuity of the stands. And then if you see a stand and then there's a clear cut in there or some sort of treatment, or you see the that the delineation is off, well then it's just a good indication. So that's why it's definitely helpful to use the satellite imagery. So you said you wanted to go up to the highlands.
Well, I was just curious,
Yep.
we all know what's up there.
This is a free map. It's a free map.
Yeah, this is all 100% free, right? Like you can all access this and play with it for hours, and you don't even have to print the map off. You can just come in here and turn all of these different layers on, right? And so there's a fresh cut.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was 90% balsam fir and black spruce 10%. Don't see a lot of management options in an area like that. 75. So this was photo interpreted in 2009. So the volume was probably up a little bit higher, but the species mix was likely bang on. And there's not a lot of options once you get up in the plateau in terms of species that you're going to find up there. So anyway, yeah, that's just one example of the different types of layers that we can turn on here as we make our maps.
Could you just go down again, bring it down a bit?
Up to the highlands, or?
Okay, just hold on for, why is this looks like older growth, is it?
That's a good question. Let's find out. So that's 100% black spruce.
That's 209.
Yeah. And so that one's about 90% white spruce, which is, I mean, you can kind of tell by the logging rows what you're going to find there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the only reason that these patches are like this is because they changed the transparency just so we can actually see. If we look in here, balsam fir, 90%. So yeah, basically the color coding is based on like I say, the dominant tree species that is there.
Is it possible to have a legend on the same web page as you're interacting with the maps, and then you don't have to click on each individual stand to see the species?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and the short answer is yes. So where we're at right now is this is kind of the exploratory part of it, right? So we're just kind of looking around, we're trying to figure out what data we want, where we want to look in Nova Scotia. Let's do something real time. Somebody give me their address. So we're in the ballpark anyway. We got Westlake Ainsley. Let's zoom out a little bit. Oh, why does it keep doing that? Interesting. All right, so we're in Westlake Ainsley. Whereabouts is your property at?
Over in the right-hand corner here.
On this side? Oh, over here?
Yeah, but down towards the corner.
Down towards the corner.
And you see that little point there?
This point here?
No, the next one up.
This one here? Yeah?
Over this way.
Over this
Over
way?
down to the corner. Yeah, right there.
Down here?
That's it.
Okay. So we're zoomed in. Now let's, so we just use that as an address finder, but now that we're zoomed in close enough, we should be able to, let's put our property boundaries up here. There. So now we have our PIDs. So is this your property here?
No, it's the one where the point is, on that point. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It runs along the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're right in here.
Yeah,
Looks like you got some nice hardwood on your property there, do you?
yeah, I do.
Yeah, oh, good for you. Yeah.
Any trout in that lake?
Yeah,
Sometimes.
there is, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and so this is, like, most of the times when I get requests for maps, and even when I work for Port Hawkesbury Paper, I'd make these for people. They want a satellite imagery for moose hunting in the Highlands, or they just wanted a property boundary, like just a boundary for their own properties with the satellite imagery. So I'll turn off the forest stands, or no, actually leave those on for a second because we had a question over those. So let's zoom out here. So let's say, for example, this is the area, this is the centerpiece of our map here, okay?
Yeah.
So we have everything lined up. We're just gonna go with boundary lines and our dominant tree species here. So then we go over to our printing section here. And in here, you have a variety of options. So you can change the title. So Woodland Conference map example, pretty straightforward. Then you have layout options here for printing your map. And so in this, you can choose whether or not you show a legend for all the different attributes or features that you're showing. So you can say map only, or you can have more than a map. So these are just different printing sizes. I usually go with a landscape and tabloid B, so that's a nice size map. And then if you go into your advanced features, you can force the scale. So if you want to have it at a particular scale, so let's do, I don't know, 1 to 15,000. That seems like a reasonable, workable map. You can change the name, the copyright, all that sort of stuff. This stuff here, it's the print quality. The higher those numbers are, the higher the quality your map is going to be. So it'll take a second to think. And again, you can do all this on your phone too. Or your grandkids can do it on their phone, whatever the case. All right, so we've created our map. Now, I'm going to click on that, and you'll see that the legend is here because we chose property boundaries, so that's our purple boundary lines. And then you see the leading tree species according to color, right? So back to your point, like we know that yellow is yellow birch, sounds pretty intuitive to me. You know, so I'm guessing you have a lot of sugar maple on your property?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess the map is somewhat accurate. How do the boundary lines look?
It's a mixture, sugar maple,
Yeah.
yellow birch, and lots of beech.
Yeah. So, now the reason why you can print your map either with a legend that shows everything and you're locked in scale, or you can choose not to, is that if you, typically speaking, if you're going to make a map that you want to use on your phone using a Venza, for like a GPS, then all you want to see is the map, because the computer software in the background, you know, will kind of tell you everything else. And so it's just a way of displaying your map without having any wasted or additional information on there. So now that we've created this map, you can email it to yourself. You can, you know, if you have a printer, you can print it off. You know, you can just save it on whatever device you're using, or just come back to the website whenever you want to poke around and peek at it, right?
So is that already geo-referenced, or do you have to do something else?
No, that's the beauty of it. It's already
Oh,
geo-referenced,
wow. Okay.
right? So what the automatic geo-referencing does is that when it's creating this map, it takes all of the coordinates, the information that tells you where things are specifically, and builds it into that file. Okay, so when we go to load this onto Avenza Maps, then it'll know automatically where it's supposed to be. So, how many of you are familiar with Avenza Maps? Okay, well, that's awesome. I guess I don't really have to go over that too much then. For those of you who aren't, just briefly, if you go on to, I mean, you can learn a little bit about it from the website itself. There's some little tutorials and stuff like that. And they have a couple of different products, but Avenza Maps is basically what you want to be using. So you can download that at your Apple Store or your Google Play. And there's a free version and there's a paid version. So like most things, the paid version has a little more utilities, some more bells and whistles on it. But for your average person, even most forestry contractors, the free version is perfectly fine. So what you can do is, after you've created your map in the landscape viewer, save it on your phone, someplace where you can find it easily enough. And then you can go through the app, and you can load up to 3 maps at a time. And so that's the limits of the free version. If you decide that you want to use a different map, when you remove a map from Avenza, it doesn't delete it from your phone. So you don't lose your map altogether. So you can have as many maps as you want on your phone. You can only have 3 of them loaded into the app at one time. And I didn't bring out, didn't make like a PowerPoint presentation on Avenza or anything like that, because it wasn't exactly what this is about. But with Avenza, with the map, the free map that you've created using this free app, you can use it as a GPS. You don't need cell service or anything like that. All you need is satellite lock. And so that's a huge advantage over using Google Maps, because oftentimes, like with those services, they're Wi-Fi dependent, and there's no shortage of people who have gone out to the woods thinking that they can navigate around, and all of a sudden they lose signal and service. With this, you don't need any internet access whatsoever. You just need a reasonable lock on some satellites, and that'll show you where you are. So then you can navigate around on the free map that you created. You can, track logs, so you can log where you're walking. So again, like when Todd was talking about submitting a map for road building, you could take this app, you could walk in, you could plot out your wet areas, avoid those, make your map, lay out where you're going to put your road, and then send the information off, and it's all completely free. There's also a measurement tool on there, so you can measure your distances. You can draw polygons, and so you can do area measurements in that way. You can't do, like on the free version, you can't do a closed loop polygon. You can only do a line, but then you can use like a graphic to kind of draw around it if you wanted to. So it's, like we use it at home, we measured off all of our fence lines for our property, for our animals and our pastures and stuff like that. So pretty convenient tool. So I don't know, I guess at this point, you don't want to go, like I said, you don't want to go too far into the technical sides of things. This is really more of an awareness presentation, along with a couple of what I feel are basic steps to get you from turning on your computer to creating a map to printing it off.